Hello, everyone, and welcome to New Consciousness Review. I'm Miriam Knight, and our guest today is John Hunter. John is an acclaimed teacher and educational consultant, and for over 3 decades, he has led his young students through the World Peace Game. It's a hands-on simulation of the complex issues facing humanity and global leaders, and success is defined as world peace and increased prosperity for all nations. It came to national and international prominence first as a documentary film and now as a book called World Peace and Other Fourth Grade Achievements. John Hunter has shared the lessons of the World Peace Game at venues as varied as the TED Conference, the Aspen Institute's Ideas Festival, the United Nations, the Pentagon, Harvard University's Law School and Graduate School of Education, and Georgetown University. We're so pleased and honored to have him with us as a guest today. Welcome, John.
Oh, it's a real thrill and a pleasure, Miriam, to be with you. Thank you for having me.
It's our delight, and I so enjoyed reading your book. John, tell us how your upbringing and your personal spiritual development informed your attitudes towards peace and conflict.
Well, you know, it of course begins with the family, with my mother and father. We're very close-knit, very quiet, peaceful sort of family, living in very tumultuous times, actually. We were in the segregated South, an African-American family. But my family's approach, we call it now the shadow school, which was to work against difficulties in a very quiet, almost invisible kind of way. And this family quietude really sort of permeated everything I did and the attitudes I developed later. And it really tied into, you know, the quietest or the more contemplative aspects that I discovered in traveling abroad in China, Japan, and India. So that kind of overall very deep, allowing space, that empty space that didn't really have content or agenda so much, was really a kind of a preset or a template for me to even begin thinking about teaching. So the family led me abroad, and being led abroad, I ended up coming back to my family ways in a way.
Mm-hmm. Now, you created the game some 35 years ago in a kind of flash of insight. Tell us about your vision and how you recognized its importance at the time.
Right. That very open space, it continued. When I actually got my first teaching assignment, I was excited, idealistic. I was a young man, 1977, 78, and I wanted to do the best I could, and I wanted to bring the best I could possibly manage in teaching to my classroom. And I asked my supervisor when I was hired, what should I do? How should I proceed to do teaching right? And she astounded me. She really upset my entire apple cart, so to speak. She simply asked me, what did I want to do? And providing that clear, empty space, that open area to begin thinking about how I might see things or how I might uncover what was there rather than being handed a mandate or a manual, was really liberating as much as it was upsetting. And so from that, I developed the first World Peace Game, which really just came out of following my mentor's advice to teach to the students' passion, to find out what they loved and what they cared about. And in 1978, we didn't have any social media. We only had board games for teenagers. So I used that as an impetus to start board games and what I was required to teach. At that time, it was African studies. I did a mashup and put the two together and then brought in problem solving, which had just sort of come into vogue in 1978. And with that beginning, there was a 4-foot by 5-foot plywood board on the floor with hundreds of toy store and hobby shop toys and little figurines. And then a few years later, I had that vision you talked about where just one night, late one night, I sat bolt upright in bed and I had the entire vision of a 3-dimensional plexiglass structure with thousands of moving pieces and 50 or more interlocking global problems all working as one gigantic equation together. And I quickly struggled to get it all written down at about 2 or 3 a.m. And that really became the modern world peace game, which has since been tweaked by my students even further.
Describe it a little further, because this plexiglass structure has undersea, earth. You describe it for us.
Sure. It's a 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot plexiglass tower. It's essentially four by 4 sheets of 1/4-inch plexiglass horizontally stacked or arranged one above the other from the floor up to about 4.5 feet. It towers over most of my 9-year-olds who play. I played from 4th grade all the way up to adults now, and high school's where the game started. But this structure stands in the middle of my classroom. The undersea level is represented by the first pane of glass down at their shoelaces, really. And you have undersea mining, submarines, sunken civilizations, reefs, undersea oil drilling operations. Then there's a ground and sea level just about at their knees. And that's covered with, of course, cities, towns, factories, mountains, armies, and navies, too. We move up to the aircraft level, which is above that, and that, of course, is a 4 by 4 sheet plexiglass, and that's about at their eye level. And here we have giant puffs of cotton for clouds that are moved around randomly by the weather goddess, one character in our game who handles the random events, the random stock market, and random weather. And above that, we have an outer space level with asteroids, asteroid mining, space stations, satellites, and even a black hole. The kids love that part particularly. And the game is played by having 4 groups of students divided into 4 country teams, or cabinets we call them. I choose the leadership. I choose the prime minister, who then in turn chooses their cabinet, secretary of state, minister of defense, and a CFO, or chief financial officer. We have a UN, arms dealers, and a World Bank body, and also the weather goddess I mentioned. And finally, we have a saboteur. A saboteur is a student who's usually always in the office in trouble, but we found a way to sort of engage that skill set in a secret way to help us actually improve the game. And that all works together to make this giant 8 to 10 week routine where the students actually do seem to solve the world's problems and save the world time and time again.
It's just wonderful to
Thank you for thinking that way.
To follow them. It's really amazing. When you developed this game, it was 35 years ago. How have you seen it evolve? I mean, with technology, with the internet, and so on.
Well, that's a really interesting question, Miriam, because I was adamantly against any technology being involved with the game at all from the very beginning. I thought that the visceral, in your face, in the room, interpersonal relationship where you can almost smell the pheromones was critical to the real deep learning experience. And I've since softened in that attitude. Now we're having a professor from MIT and some large gaming companies and Silicon Valley design firms looking into how they might augment the game with technology, not replacing it. I'm adamant about the physical structure and the interpersonal relationships being the core of it and remaining the core. But I'm open to the possibility of sharing it in a wider way than I could simply just by teaching one class at a time. So that whole approach of having them in the room, dealing with it together, has been the core of everything. And we have essentially no technology in the game whatsoever. My friends say it's not low tech, John. It's no tech. There's nothing there. You use a pointer, a metal pointer, or a wand to indicate things on the board. That's about the highest level of technology that we have. And it seems to be beyond technology in a way, and we understand that putting it online with strangers playing would defeat the purpose. It would not be as deep and as rich of a learning experience, removing that central ingredient, relationships. And that ingredient, relationships, underpins everything I do in teaching. It's really the core of how I think teaching is carried out in the best way.
I'm actually in awe of the humility and the deep compassion that you bring to all your interactions with the students. Yeah,
Oh, Mary, it's not humility, really. It's me having to face the truth. The truth is, I don't know all the answers. The students have wisdom in and of themselves. And once I recognize and respect that and honor that and accept that, then I have a room full of co-teachers. I have 25 to 30 co-teachers, and 30 heads are wiser than one. So it's not really humility. It's just accepting the actual fact. And of course, facing that fact is part of removing my own blinders, my own filters, my own presuppositions about what teaching is supposed to be and what I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to do and who's in charge. And that filter gets removed or gets chipped away at every time the students play, because they reveal, my own shortcomings. They're revealed to me every time we play. And, I have to bow in wisdom and honor the wisdom of all those assembled together. It's just a fact. It's just the way things reveal themselves to actually be.